Hey folks, today's show is brought to you by DuckDuckGo.com, the search engine that doesn't track you. Try a superior search experience with smarter answers, less clutter, and real privacy, unlike those other guys. Try it yourself at DuckDuckGo.com. DuckDuckGo, the smarter and safer way to search for everything. Now, let's start the show.
Our country has tremendous potential, but we don't use it. And what we really have to do is make America great again.
What is up, centipedes? Welcome to MAGAPod, the only podcast dedicated to the idea of Make America Great Again. Once again, I'm your host, Mark Hammond, and I'm so glad you decided to stop by. Now, this is actually episode 20, if you're keeping count, and that's not counting the 8 DNC and RNC special shows and the one secret show that's out there on the internet where we talk about TRP. So it's been an awesome ride so far. We've had a grand total of 1.35 million downloads. So that's over 28 shows, 2.5 months, and this show wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the listeners. So I want to thank all of you so much. Not only do you subscribe on iTunes, but you're also downloading the show from Ergated.com and from MAGAPod.com. So thank you so much, bros. Okay, the other thing I wanted to talk about was the reaction I got from episode 19 with Kevin Hess, where I got all worked up over Mark Maron and his incredibly stupid comments on Donald Trump, like Donald Trump is Satan incarnate or some bullshit like that. Now, you guys have fallen into two camps. The first camp, you don't know who the hell I'm talking about. You would have liked a better explanation of who I was ripping into before I started ripping into him, but you still loved it. Now, the other camp is excited about me ripping into him, loved it. They knew who he was. They're afraid that he might start crying, but they also want me to start talking about another person. Mention so-and-so. Talk about this guy. Talk about that girl. This person says something really stupid. You should talk about that. So I get the message I'm getting is that you want me to cut loose on somebody, and I can do that. So looking through my Rolodex of who there really is kind of bothering me right now. So you know who I really hate right now? It's not the Hillary supporters. Have you seen her rallies? There ain't nobody at those rallies for me to hate on. 5,000 person room, and they can barely find 300 idiots to stand in it. No, what is really pissing me off right now are the cucks and the never-Trumpers and the traitors. Look, we know what is at stake. If Hillary wins, we are going to have a super liberal Supreme Court. Second Amendment will go bye-bye. It'll get chewed up bit by bit, and the social justice warrior crowd will win. So for the life of me, I cannot understand why so-called conservatives would be constantly parroting the same mainstream media lies, the same mainstream media opposition to Trump. So let's talk about one in particular. Now, it would be easy for me to sit here and bash on just your typical liberal person like Lena Dunham for like 3 to 5 minutes. I could talk about what a piece of shit she is. I could talk about how she finger blasted her sister and she's a child molester. I mean, we could talk about that. It would be funny. But right now, the real enemy is in our own ranks. We know what we're up against, so it's ponderous how someone like, say, Amanda Carpenter could parrot anti-Trump talking points ad nauseum on her Twitter feed. So you might be asking, okay, who is Amanda Carpenter? Okay, I know you're definitely asking because nobody knows who she is. Well, besides being the alleged mother of Ted Cruz's love child, she is famous for saying on Twitter back on December 22nd, 2015, Daddy Cruz is coming to get you, Washington Post. But she is so much more worse than just bearing the rat child for Lion Ted, allegedly. She is a CNN on-staff rhino available to dispute any point at her master's commands. Trump just made a joke. Who's going to blow it out of proportion? Who's going to blow it way out of proportion? Wouldn't it be great if the person who blew it out of proportion was a woman and she could come on feigning shock like, oh, my stars. Yeah, well, CNN has got a ringer, contributor. By the way, contributor, when you hear that word contributor, that's code for freelance. That's girl on call for CNN. Just saying, if they really liked you, Amanda, they'd put a contract on it. But you might just be a good time gal for CNN. And hey, who am I to judge? But let me ask you this. If you really oppose Hillary, why are you parroting every single anti-Trump sentiment in existence on your Twitter feed? In fact, your entire Twitter feed is anti-Trump. You are like a Hillary supporter. I know Hillary supporters who do not bash Trump as much as you do. And what's with this weird love of Ted Cruz? I can't take anybody seriously when they get weak-kneed over Ted Cruz. What woman goes, oh, you know who my dreamboat is Ted Cruz? That's ridiculous. I mean, did you have a crush on Mickey Mouse when you were a child? Also, lots of selfies after you've spent time in the makeup chair. Okay, now I'm just being cunty. But seriously, you never Trumpers and you rhinos are the goddamn worst. Just please shut the fuck up, please. Or at the very least, have the decency to stop calling yourself conservatives and go buy yourselves one of those I'm with stupid t-shirts, or I'm with her shirts, because your Twitter feed and your contributions on CNN, you must be with her, because you damn sure ain't with us. I mean, Jesus Christ, Nicole Wallace over at MSNBC is a million times more entertaining and more conservative than you are, and she works in that hellhole. So explain that to me. Okay, so you people done it. You've antagonized me to the point where I had to shit on somebody. Don't regret it. Don't apologize. Anybody who loves Ted Cruz that much has got to just be a terrible, terrible person. And the allegation that that's Ted Cruz's love child, that's even worse. I feel bad for the kid. I mean, generally I oppose abortion, but gosh, in a case like that, I would have said, go for the hanger, sister. But anyway, now, so if these cucks and rhinos keep it up, I'm going to start mowing a path through these idiots. Get it straight. I'm looking at you, Shapiro. I'm looking at you, O'Reilly. Shut the hell up. Let other people talk on your show. I'm looking at you, Beck. Knock it off and get on board, or you are enabling Hillary Clinton. End of story. For a number of years, I was a union guy. I was actually part of AFSCME, so it's a union for city, county, and state workers. Now, we had a way of, when we had a tough time, we had issues coming up, we had a tough way of solidifying the ranks. I remember we brought in some Teamsters because we were having a hard time. We had a lot of people within our union who couldn't keep their mouths shut, and they wouldn't help out or stand up when the times got tough. They would start crying like little bitches. So we actually had a Teamster come in and kind of explain to us what was going on, try to get us to solidify. And I remember he said something really great that I really liked. He said, if a member of our group can stand up when it counts, they shouldn't be allowed to stand up at all. So I'm just saying. All right, you guys, now I'm going to get hate mail about being misogynist, but oh well. Speaking of hate mail, it is now time for the MAGAPod hate mail bag. Every week we get the hate mail at show@magapod.com. Anyone can email the show, but I'll only read the email on the air if it's a negative one. So without further ado, let's check the mailbag. Okay, first email is from Julia. She writes, oh my fucking God, you guys are so gay for Donald Trump. If you stopped sucking his dick for a second, maybe you would see that Trump is a monster. Okay, so if you were looking for the typical Trump bashing that you can get everywhere else, I have no idea why you'd be listening to this show, Julia, but okay. But let me make a suggestion. Maybe if you pull yourself away from Hillary's clit for 1 second, you could actually take a critical look at your own candidate instead of bitching about Donald Trump all the time on a Donald Trump show. Okay, second email is from Mrs. Precious, and that Precious was not spelled correctly. Just want to point that out. Not saying anything. I'm not a great speller, just saying. Why the fuck you trolling BLM supporters on Twitter? Typical white male harassment of black folks. You as bad as those cops that killed Freddie Gray. Okay, first of all, none of those guys have been convicted, so let's not get slanderous. But if you want to get chippy and you want something to complain about, I'll say it. Fuck Freddie Gray. So now you actually have something else to complain about. So I hope you feel good. So now you have something legitimately to complain about. Okay, not even legitimately. Okay, let's run through the death threats really quick here. So these are the death threats I get. Usually this is all ridiculous stuff. Okay, so some of this is, I found your address. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to run you over in my car. I'm going to find your kids and hurt them. Now, these are also funny. I mean, I don't even have any kids. So if you're out there and you're trying to get at me, please don't hurt any kids because it won't bother me at all. Well, you know what I mean. I don't have any kids, so you can't hurt my kids. And my address really isn't that hard to find. I mean, I'm in the white pages. I'm in Arizona, but I am packing. I'm not afraid of anybody. So if you got a problem, then you know where to find me. But I know you won't because this is just a game you guys play. Send me the death threats over and over and over. Again, it's the same nonsense. Okay, let's go through the racial stuff. And again, I'm only half Mexican. Now, when I insult BLM, I'm a white man with white male privilege. Every other time, when I get shit from all the haters, they always bring up the fact that I'm half Mexican, and it always goes right to the racial stuff. So I like to pick the best ones, and I like to read them out to you. So here we go. So here are the best ones from the lefties and the showbots. You are a bean brain eating dipshit. You probably smell like tacos. You're a filthy border jumper. And here's where people called me a fence fairy, a lubricano, a greaser. I mean, is this the 50s? And of course, someone lovingly called me a river nig, which I always love and appreciate. Okay, last email is from the show's #1 hater and superfan, Debbie. She writes every day to me, and I read one email every day, every show. Debbie writes, "Hey, Mark, how's the show going? I keep waiting for the day that you die under mysterious circumstances so I can celebrate. Are you dead yet? Don't email me back until tomorrow morning. I want to just pretend that you are dead." So, of course, I responded right away. Just, that'll learn her. I just want to let her know, I'm fine, Debbie. Don't worry about me at all. As always, sassy and classy. That's Debbie, our #1 fan. Gets her email read every single episode on MAGA Pod. We have a really big show for you today. Really big show. We have 2 guests on MAGA Pod today. First up is Cassandra Fairbanks. You may know her better as from Twitter at Cassandra Rules. She is a writer, and she's also the woman who exposed the DNC shenanigans on Twitter and Periscope, both on the convention floor and outside the convention center. And she's also a person that went from a Bernie Sanders supporter to a Trump supporter. So we're going to talk to her. And then after that, we're going to have a conversation with Regated.com reporter Daniel Walsh. We're going to talk about the Never Trump movement and why they might literally be retarded. Okay, let's have a conversation with Cassandra Fairbanks.
Well, I've been an independent pretty much my whole life. But I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. I registered Democrat for this election, but I'd never actually voted Republican before.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, now I'm full on for Trump.
So what kind of happened? I mean, I've talked to some male Bernie Sanders supporters who've come over to the Trump camp, and it seemed like they were more disillusioned, like sooner back, like after California. What was your own personal journey from Bernie Sanders supporter to now Trump supporter? What kind of explain it to me, and how was that like?
Well, it was weird because I was writing for extremely liberal website. And so it was basically my job to watch Trump speeches and pick out anything where he may have misspoke or like little gotcha moments that we could turn into headlines.
Mm-hmm.
And so in doing this, I was watching all of his speeches. And so I inadvertently ended up liking him, I guess. And then I started to feel guilty about all the articles that I had written. And I was like, I should probably promote the hell out of Trump now.
Do you think since you've been on that end, they're purposely looking for things to catch? It seems like they seem to want to make a mountain out of a molehill. Am I right in kind of that assumption? I know us on this side, we always say that, but sometimes I wonder if we're preaching to the choir. But you being a person who's been on the other side, is that kind of the truth?
Oh, absolutely. Like, that's what we did. That was my job. Like, pick out anything stupid that he said, figure out how he could spin it in the worst possible way. It's really dishonest.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about and why I wanted to talk to you on the show, not only about that, but was also about during the DNC convention. I know there were a lot of people watching. You were actually there. And now I'm a former Democrat myself. I've been a Democrat my entire life up until this election cycle. And I, watching it on TV, watching how things are coming down on Periscope and on Twitter, it's kind of shocking to me from the outside looking in to hear, chants for peace being drowned out by USA at the Democratic National Convention.
Yeah.
What was your feeling on the floor? Was it like, were you in bizarro land, or what were your feelings when you're on the floor and you're hearing this?
It was absolutely crazy. I mean, hearing it, like you're saying, like there was a chant of no more wars. And Democrats were getting angry about it. And I was just like, what planet are we on right now? This is crazy. There was people were going around taking away Bernie supporters' signs. I've never seen anything like it. It was shocking. And they didn't show any of this on TV from what I'm hearing. So it was really bizarre. I almost got into a fist fight at the DNC. So, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, you almost got into a a fist fight at the DNC. I mean, the Democratic National Committee, it's going to boil over to violence. Now, you know what's weird? You mentioned this, to your point. This really wasn't reported. It seemed like the people who were really on top of this were the people on Twitter, or the people like yourself, who were there on the floor, who were taking video, who were taking pictures. But I was watching this on a couple different feeds. I was watching the C-SPAN feed where you just got the speeches. I was watching the CNN, the Fox News feed, the MSNBC. They never once showed anything that the dissension that was going on in the hall, and they definitely didn't show anything that was going on outside until like day 3. And even then, it was only on Fox Business. Is it? I'm not sure if you were aware of that. So knowing that you were one of those frontline people to report what was actually going on, is that kind of mind-blowing for you, as for somebody who actually has worked in the media before, that true citizen journalism is coming into play? Yeah,
I mean, you would think that these would be the stories that the mainstream media would be reporting. Like the amount of just like crazy dissent at the DNC was actually a bigger story, in my opinion, than the boring speeches people are giving. And it's shocking to me that, you know, there's something like 5,000 members of the press there. And the only way that these things were getting out was through like 4 or 5 Twitter accounts, you know. Crazy.
Well, and you know, and we hear like you know, when there was reports of, you know, white noise machines, there was reports of, you know, just like you had mentioned earlier, people getting their sign taken. And it was funny is like as this was coming out the night after in a lot of the mainstream media outlets, they were like, oh yeah, there were rumors of this, there were rumors of that, there's rumors of you know, people getting their signs taken. And I wonder to myself, I'm like, well,
I filmed it.
Yeah, you filmed this. I'm like, you literally filmed someone having their sign literally taken away from them, and you hear on MSNBC saying, oh yeah, well there was a little bit of, I think Rachel Maddow said there was a little bit of dissension on the floor day 1, but then it settled out. So I mean, you were actually there. Did that dissension stop on day 1, or was it pretty throughout?
No, it did not stop. It escalated, if anything. People were getting booed. Anytime that Hillary Clinton's name was mentioned, there was like a strong booing from the crowd. It was crazy. It was really pleasing to me.
Yeah, that excites me. I'm like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, I was shocked that you couldn't hear it on TV. People were tweeting at me. They're like, we can't hear this. But I mean, I was taking videos of it. Like, it was really happening. They were like, we can't hear it on TV. I was just like, that's insane. You would think that would be like such a big news story that people would want to cover, that like journalists would, I don't know. It's crazy.
Did you happen to see any of the action that was going on outside? I know like I said, that was shockingly the one news site that was actually covering what was going on outside was Fox Business, where we literally had we had Democrats jammed up against the DNC wall, there, with their signs protesting. And then you actually had at one point, you had people trying to climb over the wall, trying to get into the.
It got knocked down at one point.
Oh, did it? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I was out there quite a bit, but they made it really difficult for the press to cover the protest. So I don't fault the press as much for not covering the outside protest, because they literally they made a labyrinth. Like, there was a press entrance, and that's where people were gathering to protest. But as soon as a large crowd gathered there, they closed that off, and they wouldn't let people in or out that way. And so you had to walk like a mile and a half up and then a mile and a half back around to get around this giant wall to get to where the protests were. And you couldn't like drive or anything. Like, you had to walk it because it was all blocked off. And by the time that you got there, a lot of the action, would be over, or there's just so many different factors. So it was really difficult to cover it. I mean, I was out there and I was doing it, but running those like 2.5 miles in that heat was it was difficult to do it every day.
Yeah, let me ask you this, because I had a friend of mine, USA for Trump 2016. He was down there at the RNC, and he was down there for all 4 days. And I talked to him every day when he was down there, and he gave me live reports. And I'd always ask him. My first question would always be like, "How's the vibe? How are people feeling? Are people like, oh my gosh, we got to go to this convention. We're here to support Trump, like yay, or people pumped, or how do people feel?" And I guess generally the feeling I got from him was that people were excited. There were some protesters, but they seemed that they just kind of wanted attention. It didn't. At least that's how the RNC seemed. At least that's what he reported. So I want to get your feedback on those 4 days. What was the vibe from, and not only from on the convention floor, but just in the city, talking to other, because usually a convention is like it's like a gab fest. It's like a love-in. People are hanging out, they're talking, people are sharing ideas, they're making contacts. Everyone feels good about what's going on, or at least they're putting on a brave face to feel good about what's going on. So, I hate to use the word vibe, but it is a vibe. So, what was the vibe like? Yeah, at the Democratic National Convention.
I definitely agree with what he said about the RNC. The RNC was so much fun. There was very little protest, and it was all very contained, so it was easy to get in and out of the convention. People were hanging out. Trump supporters were camping next to protesters in the park. Everything was fine. Then the DNC rolled around, and it was, very contentious. Like, there was this, like the vibes were just bad. The Bernie supporters were hating the Hillary Clinton supporters. The few Clinton supporters hated the Bernie supporters. There was tons of people protesting outside who were furious. It was a very tense situation. The fight that I almost got into was with another journalist because she ripped away somebody else's Bernie sign. And so I grabbed the sign away from her. And I thought we were going to get into it. And she was like, "I'm getting security," and I was like, "Dude, you just stole somebody's Bernie sign. Like, you're supposed to be pressed." What the fuck? I'm sorry.
No, you can say it. You can say it. This is uncensored.
Yeah, it was just like, what do you think you're doing? Like, this is crazy. And so it was very hostile.
Well, let me ask you for context. Are you the type of person who goes to out in public and gets in fights, or is this like the first time this has ever happened where you've had something that was this kind of?
There was a couple situations at the DNC with Hillary Clinton supporters. I'm not going to lie. But she was clearly in the wrong. Like, I was with other people who were like, what the hell just happened? Why did she do that?
Do you think that seeing her supporters, do you think, just your own opinion, it's just an opinion, but you're there, you were a former Democrat, and you obviously have some, share some similar values with Bernie Sanders if you were a Bernie Sanders supporter in the past. Do you think her supporters really like her, or do you think that they just dislike Trump so much that it just kind of overrides the fact that, I can ignore this about her, this issue and that issue because I really don't like him? Do you think they really love her, or do you think they really like her at all?
No, I think that there's very few people. It's a mixture of, we want to see the first female president and we're terrified of Trump, because the media has spun this out of control. They're being manipulated and they're terrified of Trump. That's what it is. And, they want to see the first female president, and they don't really seem to care that she's a monster.
I couldn't agree more.
It's like, okay, so our first female president is going to be this corrupt, wicked, horrible woman. That's wonderful. Good job. Way to go, guys.
Do you think that you think with the Bernie Sanders supporters, the ones who were, well, let me ask you this about the Bernie Sanders supporters. Was there a lot of defeatedness, or was there a lot of anger, or was there kind of a nice mixture of the two?
It was a mixture of the two. People were, during after he endorsed her, there was a mass walkout of Bernie Sanders delegates. There's a picture of it online, actually. The stadium half emptied out. It was crazy. They put duct tape over their mouths and wrote silence, and they all walked out and stormed Media Row, which they technically weren't allowed into. And they seemed really sad. There was a lot of people who were crying. But then there was a lot of people who were really angry, and a lot of Bernie delegates told me that they're voting for Trump. but they wouldn't go on camera or wouldn't let me use their names in my stories or anything. So, but that's the thing. Like, I mean, even after I came out and said I was supporting Trump, I got called a Nazi. People tried to get me fired. It's crazy. They've created such a hostile environment.
You made a comment back during the I think it was day 3 or day 4 of the DNC. It was right after the DNC. I remember it like clockwork because it was a great comment and I loved it. I retweeted it and I hearted it. And what's funny, it was such the perfect comment. And then not but a week later, I'm not saying he copied you, but there's this sentiment that you captured in that moment that Milo repeated on his show the following Friday, and then I've mentioned at Regated, and I think it was you said that the new conservative movement is punk rock, because when you look at all the disruptors, all the people who are causing trouble, all the people who are trying to change everything, there's so much hate and there's so much animosity. And to your point, you say, if you stand up and you say, I'm going to support Trump, or, or even if you don't say, if you say, I don't really like Trump, but I'm going to support him because I have too many problems with her. And then you get hated on, you get hateful emails, you get called a Nazi. If you're a male, you get called a sexist. Do you get called a sexist? I wonder.
Oh yeah, all the time. I get called like a racist sexist, and I'm just like, I'm Puerto Rican and a woman. Like, I don't. Okay, guys, you're reaching, but all right. Yeah, you have to really have a thick skin to be able to put up with all this. And they're like, we're the tolerant party, and I mean.
Did you ever think in your life that would ever be the thing, that the Republican Party would be the tolerant party?
No, I did not. And it's really funny because a lot of the things that Trump is pushing are things that were like core values of the Democratic Party at one point. I mean, he's against intervention and nation building, and he wants to focus on schools and infrastructure and instead of senseless wars. And he's about using our military for defense, but not for oil or fighting her buddy's wars like Clinton. So it's like these are things that were like hallmarks of the Democratic Party, and now it's like so rebellious to support those. It's crazy.
Now, I'd be remiss, since I'm part of the right media with my friends at Breitbart, all this stuff. So I'd be remiss. I know all my friends and all the people listening to the show would hate me if I didn't ask this, because there's this rumor, and you were at the Democratic National Convention, so I think you can confirm or deny it for us. And we saw pictures of it, and then we heard later on, I think Snopes said that it wasn't true, and then I heard Lawrence. I mean, you can only take what Lawrence O'Donnell says with a grain of salt, but he said it wasn't true either. But tell me, were there boxes of U.S. flags given out after day 1 on day 2, 3, and 4 because there wasn't enough, people waving American flags on the floor of the convention?
Yeah, I think I have a video that actually they were going around with like these big boxes of like little American flags and handing them out to the people in the crowd.
And what did they say? Did they say like, here, wave this? Or did they explain why? Or were they just acting like it was a freebie? Like, hey man, here's some swag. Here's a flag to wave.
No, yeah, they were just handing them out being like, here, wave this. And then they were like, they were telling people like which chants to use against different kinds of chants, and they had like giant banners stashed under the seats so they could block protesters.
Mm-hmm. I saw the WikiLeaks one. That was great.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. But the American flag thing was definitely happened.
That's a true thing.
There were burning of flags outside, and it was actually I filmed this as well. There's a black Trump supporter who got into the middle of it and was like, he grabbed the flag and he was like, I'm not letting go of this. You're not burning this. And like, he like just would not let go for probably a good 30 minutes. He held on to that flag and he wouldn't hand it over.
Okay, I want to thank Cassandra Fairbanks. You can actually follow her on Twitter at Cassandra Rules. So definitely check her out. She has a lot of good information. She always retweets a lot of good stuff. She is actually right now on the cutting edge of the Milwaukee stuff, the riot coverage in Milwaukee. She's got the best links, the best Periscope feeds. You got to check her out. Okay, next up, we actually have a Regated.com writer, a friend of the show. It is Daniel Walsh. Now, he wrote this great article on Regated.com called Progressive Brain Disease of the Trump Apologist. So it's basically about the never-Trumpers, the people who are on the fence about Trump, who keep saying these stupid, ridiculous things that are really just hurting Trump at this point, and how they really need to start unifying and stop their whiny little bitching and complaining. So that's why I wanted to have Daniel Walsh on the show. We have a really great conversation. I'm so glad to share it with you. So let's join that conversation with Daniel Walsh right now. So the criticism that a lot of Trump supporters have, or what Trump supporters say, that really annoys me that you kind of capture in your article is they'll say, if only Trump would stop saying crazy stuff, if only Trump would, they say, oh, if he would stop saying crazy stuff, the mainstream media would be nice to him. If he would just stop saying crazy stuff, he'd stop throwing babies out of rallies, or he'd stop saying this, or he'd stop being so mean. If only he was nicer, the mainstream media would like him so much more. And it shocks me. I think, we both have written for, you write for Regated. I hang out over there because you guys post a show on there. But we hear this within our own ranks that if only he'd be nicer. What's the problem with that? Why shouldn't he be nicer?
Well, there's a few problems with that, really. Number one, the people that love Trump, the people that love what he's about at a core level, okay, they don't want him to become a politician. That's why they like him. They like Trump because he's not one of them. He's not a politician. He's not going to talk a bunch of crap in a nice voice with a nice smile and tell you what you want to hear, right? Mm-hmm. He's going to be accessible. This man does more interviews than I've ever seen anyone running for office do. He does more rallies unedited. They're streamed live. It's all out there for everyone to see. It's unfiltered, granted. So guaranteed, you put any politician on that stage, that many interviews, that many live streams, they're going to say things that you're going to have those aha moments, right? But that's what people like about him. He's accessible. He's real. He's what do they call him? The blue collar billionaire, right? That's kind of where that comes from. So that's number one. If he was to make the switch and become one of them, he would immediately lose a huge portion of his following. And I think they know that, and I think that's partially why they're pushing that narrative against him, honestly.
Well, let me ask this, because the other thing is, the same people who would criticize him, who would have that criticism of, oh, would you please be nicer, Trump? They then when he has a speech with a teleprompter, they're like, oh, I like the unfiltered Trump, the more off the cuff Trump. He seemed a little too stilted. So it seems like there's no winning with this, and I'm not even sure if they're...
Oh, sure, yeah.
Do you think they're never Trumpers, or do you think they're just kind of people who've been conditioned to think that the mainstream media works?
Well, yeah, you have two camps, right? So you have the never Trumpers on both sides, and on the Republican side of the aisle and the Democrat side of the aisle, you have the never Trumpers. Of course, you have the always Trumpers on both sides of the aisle, too. Those are the people no one talks about. But that aside, so you have that crew, the never Trump crew, and then you have kind of the bigger narrative, the bigger framework behind that, which is the liberal media that we've known has existed. Everybody's been talking about it for years and years. It's not conspiracy. You have MSNBC, NBC, ABC. You could go on. Fox News, I think, is slowly becoming part of the liberal media. That's nothing new. It's just no matter what he does, no matter what direction he goes in, they're going to fight him. The establishment does not want Trump in. They don't want his leadership in Congress. They don't want his leadership in front of the American people, period, on both sides.
I always thought, I was of the opinion back when I first started supporting Trump, and I saw how he was just getting shit on in the media so much. I always thought, And I mean, this is very optimistic, but I thought, you know what it is? I used to say to myself, it's just that they don't get it. It's that they're old guys; they just don't get it. That's why the O'Reillys of the world, that's why the Glenn Becks of the world, they're just old guys. They don't get it. They like it, they just don't get it, or maybe they don't understand it. But it seems to me, and your article, it kind of gets to this point. You kind of argue that they do get it. Oh, they get it, and they don't like it at all.
Absolutely. These guys, they know what's going on. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for a very long time. It's their career. They swim in it all day long. And if you are like you or like me, if you follow this stuff religiously for writing or for media, you see what's going on. I mean, you turn on MSNBC, you see a narrative introduced, and you flip the channel, and it's being talked about on Fox News within 5-10 minutes. It's on all the other news channels within 5-10 minutes. That's not a mistake. This stuff, they know what they're doing. And if you're missing that point, if you're missing the narrative that's being carried through the media as a whole, online, on TV, you're not paying attention.
I think we've talked about this. Like when you watch a story grow from like the beginning of the news week, like the baby thing, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
So the baby thing comes out. It's like, oh, he yelled at a baby, and then it becomes like, why is he so mean to babies? And then you have Planned Parenthood saying, hey, that's not right how he treats baby, even though that they're willing to stick a hanger up a woman and have the baby come out. But okay, whatever. So they say, oh, okay, that's wrong. You shouldn't treat babies like that. You have everyone saying, oh, he's such an asshole to babies, and then by Wednesday it's like, did you hear about Trump who threw the baby out of a rally? And then
Total
it's almost
scandal,
by Friday, it's like he was whipping the baby in the air like a helicopter, and he tossed the fucker right out the front door. And then you got Bill Maher on Friday night going, yeah, Trump, he fucking hates babies. It's just this weird. It's almost like everything that's found, this little thread that's found. And sometimes it's not even a misspeak. Like another thing I think I missed, but I would like to get your feedback on the gun thing. It seemed like they just latched onto that. They took a remark, and then it got blown out of proportion, and now it's turned into that he's advocating for the murder of Hillary Clinton, which is the craziest thing I ever heard
today. Yeah, completely insane. It's completely insane, and that's what we call a manufactured cycle. And they can run that from Monday to Friday. They need a 5 to 11 second audio clip, and you'll notice 90% of the time it's not in context. It's a very short audio clip, and that's all they'll show. And they know that the majority of the population, at least for now, they're okay with just kind of going off the headlines and cooler talk. I think that's going to end come the debates, but for now, they can basically run that 24/7. They can take a non-story and make it into a scandal, a 5 to 7 day scandal. Meanwhile, covering up all these Clinton emails that are coming out, everything on the TPP that's coming out, all the things that an actual journalist should be talking about are being covered up by a joke about a baby. And it's absurd, it's disgusting, and it really needs to stop.
What's funny is she reached out to the media. So she reached out to the same mainstream media that turned it on Trump. And then, so the only people who wrote about this, I don't know if we at Regated did. I might be my blind spot because I'm busy with this, but I know Breitbart wrote about this. They interviewed this woman, mom of crying baby at rally, defends Trump. Quote, it was hilarious. And she says, when asking if she's offended, quote, oh no, not at all, not one little bit. In fact, I appreciate it because you're a mother and you understand that when your baby starts making the disruption in the event, that the spotlight is on you. It's nice to have the comic relief to take the pressure off of you.
Yes.
I mean, does this sound like a woman who was offended by someone going like, someone making a baby joke? This is someone who obviously gets the joke. The woman who's the mother of the child, but nobody else got it. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Well, nobody that was there, right?
Yeah.
She was there. She was in the room. She was part of it. The same thing happened with the whole Trump, Putin, Russia scandal, right? It was an 11-second audio clip. They made it look like Trump literally was saying, I am calling on Russia to hack Hillary Clinton's emails. Now, number one, the server that those emails was on, we all knew. Everyone should have known that stuff was all behind lock and key. It's not hooked up anymore, not hackable. So that's one, okay? Number two, you look at the context of what he said, and then just a few, maybe 10 minutes after that joke, right? A journalist asked him to clarify. What were you joking? What were you saying here? Can you clarify? And he did. He answered the question. He clarified what he meant. Was that covered? Absolutely not. Of course not.
Not at all.
What we had was an 11-second clip, and now that's the narrative. That's what everyone goes back to. He calls on foreign governments to hack his competitors. It's the same thing over and over and over. I think a lot of people do see through it. But especially media types, I think they sweat over this stuff way too much. They think that this stuff's being taken more seriously than it is, that it's going to translate into bad numbers at the polls or on voting day. We saw that's not the case. We saw that as clear as day in the primaries. I personally think it's not going to stop. In fact, it's going to get worse. What's going on with this cycle? All we can do is call them out on it, and to a degree that being called out on it, I think sometimes you saw that to a degree with the whole gun thing, right? For at least a minute, some of those guys did take a step back when they were called out on it. Now it wasn't done aggressively enough, and eventually it was pushed forward, but. If anything, I think that's where a site like Brigaded, a podcast like yours that gets a lot of visibility, that's where we come in. We have to call this stuff out. Breitbart, Andrew Breitbart, who I look up to quite a bit, he talked about this for years. It was his life's work, and it's something that's still in its infancy.
It's kind of with the way the cycle is, the way it kind of turns. They catch that little string and then they blow it up into something. It's not funny. Well, it is funny. It's sad. It's funny and sad. When a good example of this would be when Julian Assange was on Bill Maher. And Bill Maher jokingly asked, "Hey, as you're ending the interview, when are you going to hack Trump?" Now, obviously, that's implying. I mean, that's a loaded question. So it's obviously a joke because one, he's a comedian. Not to say he's only a comedian, but it's a joke. At the end, you're saying goodbye, and he's jokingly saying, "Hey, when are you going to hack Trump?" By the way, and then Assange says, jokingly back, "Oh, well, we're working on it." And then what's funny? It's funny because this one-time liberal hero, now he's like public enemy number one. Now you had, years ago you talked to any liberal on the street, they would have been like, he's a hero. I can't wait to watch the movie where we have that one weird-looking European guy play him, and it'll be so great, and it'll be awesome because he's a hero. And now he's like the worst thing that ever happened. Now he's in cahoots with the Ruskies. With the Russians, and he's hacking, and he's breaking into people's privacy. I love how that's the argument that when you look at the DNC, like it's never, this stuff is taken out of context, or no, this stuff isn't true, or that isn't true, this isn't what we were thinking, there's no apology. It's just like, we got hacked by the Russians, so that's wrong, we're under attack. It's like, but you're not denying any of that stuff you said or what you're about. When you see like someone like Assange, and you see this with a lot of people who especially this election cycle, who are coming over to the Trump side, or at least are staying in the middle, or who are even those people who are refusing to take a camp, it's almost like they're derided and they're gone after. There's no pandering to those people. It's almost like shaming them into vote. Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's interesting, and put your tinfoil hats on. But I'm a big fan of Orwell. I don't know if I've written about it yet, but he used to talk about, and this was, going back to what World War I, around that time frame, how the media cycle would essentially shorten people's memories, right? So just jumping from one headline to the next, like you're talking about, finding one little thread and blowing it up, and then let's move on to the next.
Mm-hmm.
that creates essentially very short memories. And you look at Assange, who, like you said, was the liberal hero just not that long ago. As soon as he reveals something that's against the narrative, he's suddenly enemy number one. And that's absolutely a tactic that they will use to push forward their agenda. There's no shame in it. Someone like Assange, he's really neutral, right? Like, okay, he takes leaks, he takes them from anyone. They vet the leaks and they put them out there. If you go on WikiLeaks, you see they hit just about anyone. They don't care what party you're in, whose side you're on. They will hit you if the leak comes through, if it has some meat to it in terms of actual political agenda, or it's connected to a particular government, he's going to put it out there. And you see this with not just Democrats and not just with Republicans, but you see this with feminists. You see this with all these little groups, with the LGBT groups. You have someone like Milo. He's, a self-hating gay, according to the majority of the LGBTQ whatever community that I talk to now. He is a self-hating gay. Now, anyone who's seen him talk and has looked at his work would know that's certainly not the case, but that's what happens when you say something or you subscribe to something that's not part of the approved opinions of this week or this month. And what's interesting is even those switch. I mean, look at Hillary Clinton is a perfect example of this, right? She was against gay marriage. She was pro-Iraq war, but she's now the good guy in the narrative. None of that stuff comes up. So it works both ways.
Okay, so in Hannity's article, he named names, and so I wanted, because you are the identifier of cucks, and you've called out cucks within our own ranks and in the media. You're one of those strong proponents of calling people out on their bullshit, and I love it because I think it's right. So I want to let me go over some names with you, and you tell me. And
okay.
We'll say we'll talk a little bit about them. So he mentions Bill Kristol. So Bill Kristol, cuck, or is he just an idiot?
Oof, that's a tough one. I'll be honest. Bill Kristol, I really don't follow. What I've seen of him, I haven't been impressed enough with to really follow. I know that I'm sure that will sound terrible, but not much of an opinion on Bill, which should say enough, I guess.
What about Mitt Romney?
Oh God. Okay. So Mitt Romney, I've never been a fan of. I in fact even ran a page at one time that was anti-Mitt Romney when he was running against Barack Obama. I voted for Barack Obama against Mitt, and at that point I was already I was still a Democrat, but I was already very unhappy with the Obama administration. Mitt Romney is, I guess, what I would call a clinical narcissist. Mitt Romney is for Mitt Romney. He is of the crony capitalist class, right? So, where you have billionaires and multimillionaires that can really game the system and take advantage of the lower classes. They will do it, and they will do it happily, and they will fight for it openly. That's who Mitt Romney is. So of course he doesn't like Trump. They look at Trump as someone who basically he turned his back on the people he should be buddied up with right now, right? They feel like, okay, you're one of us. What are you doing? Why are you talking about how you used to pay lobbyists and pay lobbyists on both sides of the aisles? You shouldn't be putting this stuff out there. They're clearly not happy with him. Mitt Romney is a joke. He's a joke. He's a loser. He should have never been nominated as the Republican nominee. I think that the only reason he was is because they had nobody, absolutely nobody. I mean, look at the 17 or 18 candidates that ran this time around. I can't name one that I was really passionate about or even that interested in when it all started. So I've got nothing good to say about Romney. I could go on about him.
So, and then the other ones he mentions too many. He says Jeb Bush, obviously, Ted Cruz, obviously. That's like shooting fish in a barrel. Let's talk about media personalities. So let's talk about, you talked about Ben Shapiro, and I've up to this point on this show, I haven't been critical of it, but just he gets too much attention amongst the fence sitters in the Trump camp.
Sure.
Give me your thoughts on Ben Shapiro, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
Yeah, so I think that at least at some point, I'm sure Ben meant well. But what really did it for me was when I started to see Ben promoting these liberal narratives and these liberal talking points as basically reinforcement to his thoughts and ideas. So this is a guy who he was brought into the fold by Breitbart. He knows what's up, okay? Mm-hmm. He spoke against the liberal media for a long time. So for him to go and this year begin to use them and their narrative as a tool, things that I'm sure he knows very well are lies, but he'll push that stuff if it works for his little narrative. And that's when I said, okay, you know what? If he's not a sellout, he's just a complete narcissist at this point, and I've got no love for Ben, no love for Ben at all.
Yeah, let me say a few things about Ben. I first of all, I listen to that show. It's not entertaining. I mean, he to me is like Tucker Carlson. I mean, it's just you go when you think of if a Democrat was to go, okay, well, I'll make a straw man Republican and I'll give him every dopey, stupid idea that's like right off the rack, like off the shelf. This is what he should believe in. He should believe in this. He should believe in the religious right, and he should be this, and he should be that. And then that would be Ben Shapiro. That would be Tucker Carlson. Just like a piece of white bread that with mayonnaise on it. I mean, I hate to get racial. I've never said that about it. It sounds racial coming from me, but I mean that's what it sounds like. He's like a white bread with mayonnaise on it, and it's something that you could take to a church picnic, and people would eat and they'd go, yeah, it's all right, but no one would be like, oh yeah, give me another piece. It's just I don't get it, and I don't understand why. And this is another thing. I think we've talked about this with, she's not as notable, but I mentioned it at the top of the show during the monologue, was Amanda Carpenter. We have these people who continually, they say, oh, I'm on board. I'm against Hillary. But yet they repeat every anti-Trump sentiment that's out there. They stump for Hillary. And you go, when are they going to get the I'm with her shirt? When are they going to get the hat?
Well, they have it. They just don't wear it out.
Because they're not with us. I mean, they're not with us at all. They're obviously with her. You couldn't have that Twitter feed. You couldn't have a Twitter feed like Amanda Carpenter's and then say, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna vote for Trump, when you've done everything to convince people that they shouldn't vote for Trump. They should quote unquote vote their conscience instead of rally around the person who's been elected by the voters. Right.
Well, people like Amanda, you can really see right through her. What should be shocking about her is how her closeness and affinity to Ted Cruz, because everyone looks at Ted Cruz as he's the anti-establishment guy, right? He's the one senator that above all senators is a good senator. Well, why are the people around Ted constantly establishment politicians like Amanda, like his campaign manager, like all these other people that are essentially just like these establishment politicians? They hold to the liberal narrative, or what I prefer to call the mainstream empire narrative, or I'm losing my train of thought. But people like Amanda, you're absolutely right. You will see her she goes on these Twitter rants, and it sounds like she sits there and she watches MSNBC, or maybe she might have a Hillary assistant or consultant that just sends her this stuff directly. I don't know, but it goes out every 5 or 10 minutes. It's word for word what the political elite, what the Democrats, what the Hillary people are saying, and that should be shocking, because if she's that close to Ted, if she's that much of a Ted fan, why is she so cozied up to the establishment right now? It doesn't make any sense. I personally have argued and will argue that Ted Cruz is part of the establishment. He has an image that he wears on TV, but if you go back and you look at his voting record, if you look at the people he keeps close to him, it tells a different story. And I think that Amanda is just part of that whole problem. It's the establishment party, the party within a party that nobody votes for. She's part of that group.
The inner party, if you will, that go back to the. Let me read you some of these tweets. I mean, some of these are. I mean, if you said. First of all, if someone told me, okay, there's a woman out there, moderately attractive, and she is obsessed with Ted Cruz. She loves her some Ted Cruz. First of all, I'd say no, you're bullshitting me. I don't believe it. I'd say no, I just don't believe it. I don't even think his wife likes him. But here are some of the tweets that she's had. I'm going to save this one for last. This is the best one at last. But she has one where she's getting that one, she's getting a temporary tattoo with Ted Cruz, of Ted Cruz. Here she's talking about when she's referring to a Washington Post story that was anti-Ted Cruz. Daddy Cruz is coming to get you, Washington Post. Ugh. Now, this would be something that I read that I'm like, oh, that's not a tweet from Milo to Trump. This is from a woman.
That's right.
To Ted Cruz. This is someone who's obviously in love with Ted Cruz. There's a photo of him from the early 90s. Such a good photo. Essay of Ted Cruz. I love the young lawyer. Early 90s floppy hair best.
Hubba hubba.
Oh, yeah. You see him with the cigar in his mouth, and you know, what's the joke? You know, sometimes a cigar is a cigar, sometimes it's a big brown cock.
That's right. That's right.
But this is my favorite. Okay, so later on, she retweets a story from Salon. She says, really going for it today. Retweet from Salon. Why I date married men. There's warmth and there's space, there's intimacy and there's distance.
Yeah.
There's no way she's not fucking that rat face guy, right? I mean,
come on. Of course. I mean, it's and what's interesting is how she really blatantly flaunts it. I mean, she really does. And of course, nobody talks about it. He at one point was the last white hope against Trump, so of course they weren't going to bring that stuff up, but it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Well, let me ask you about another. Let's talk about the Fox personalities, because I know you mentioned it earlier. I've been kind of critical of Fox. Sometimes I watch Fox and I mean they're not as bad as like Lawrence O'Donnell or like somebody like that. They're not like completely like okay, this person is crazy and I worry about their sanity, like literally. But I mean, seriously, I call him human wet blanket Lawrence O'Donnell just because he's such a downer. Like, he would come to a party and he would be like, yeah, you know, there was a child rape on the, you know, I witnessed a child rape when I was in my early 20s, and I'd like to talk to you about it in detail. It's just, but anyways, but.
I like to imagine him going home every night and opening up a drawer where he has a gun with just one bullet. And he sits on his bed and he cries for a few minutes, and that's kind of like a ritual before he goes to bed.
Like, he's like, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Like, this is the night.
And then he cries like, fuck, I can't do it, I just can't do it.
Yeah, I got another story I got to push out tomorrow, so maybe Friday.
And then I cry because he didn't do it. I'm disappointed. Damn, that guy's still around. But I just should stop watching MSNBC. But let's talk about the Fox guys.
Yeah.
It's easy. It's easy to point at Lena Dunham. It's easy to point at, like, you know, and pick any, you know, it's easy to point at any of those, the celebrity, quote unquote celebrities at the DNC and go, yeah, let's start digging into their past. Let's start, you know, they have opinions, but it's hard to take seriously somebody who's, you know, like who finger blasted her sister, and you know, you could go on and on and on with these people. But let's talk about our own, because your article, to its point of the article, we need to crack our own because we got a lot of problems on this side of the fence.
That's right.
So when we look at O'Reilly, is O'Reilly being a cuck, or is he just obsessed with hearing his own voice? What is his problem? Why isn't he fully on board?
Well, I think it's interesting what's going on at Fox right now. The timing of Ailes being pushed out, right, was really freaking convenient. As far as I can tell, him getting pushed out meant Murdoch obtained quite a bit more power in the publication. The company. It's no secret that Murdoch has it out for Trump, right? I think he was. it was out that he or his one of his papers was out with the latest. Oh, look at the nude Trump wife. How could she possibly be our first lady? We get one of those a month, but he was behind the last one. So after I think the point where we knew Trump had it in the bag, and Ailes did fight Trump. There's no buts about it. He did. But once we knew Trump had it in the bag, Fox generally switched to, okay, we're going to start working for the Republican Party, and I personally don't have a problem with that. I know a lot of liberals do. But if they honestly believe that MSNBC and their favorite news channels, Salon, Huffington Post, don't have a bias and aren't working on an agenda, they're absolutely insane. Just be upfront with it. But anyway, that's a tangent. So what's going on at Fox is you have kind of this push and pull. I think someone like O'Reilly, who has been very pro-Trump for a while now, also has his job to consider. I'm sure that these people are being told to some degree how to run their show, what type of content is okay and what type of content is not okay to have on their show. He has to look beyond this election. He's been on the channel a very long time. Without the channel, his career would probably be he's not a new media guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, he's not going to be able to sell any of those Civil War books if he's not there.
Yeah. So what you see on Fox now is you see a lot of the Clinton narrative being pushed through Fox. It's done in an interesting way. It's generally done with a trickle of truth, and it's generally done with on a 3 versus 1, where you have 3 of the pro Clinton narrative people talking, and then you'll have one of the anti Clinton narrative people pushing back, but it's pretty clear what's going on there now, and it's interesting to see. I have to wonder if the average senior citizen viewer, that 90,000 out of the 100,000 viewers a night they get, that are generally just watching before they go to bed, I have to wonder if they pick up on it. But it's bizarre, and there's no doubt they are subscribed, they are in terms of the liberal agenda, the establishment agenda that has decided overall Clinton is who we want. We want a war hawk. We want someone who's pro-TPP. We want someone who's pro-crony capitalism, and that's Clinton. You can hold your nose over the abortion stuff. We can hold our nose over the religious rights stuff. This is our president, and I think that's pretty much decided over there.
Do you think, like, I know Hannity's been pretty. People have argued, they're like, no, Hannity's good. Hannity's good. He's been good. I think he's into it. I think he generally supports Trump. I think he likes Trump. I sometimes wonder when you watch his show, when he's reporting back, like, their reaction, and I wonder if it's almost like that's the problem with this new conservative movement, or with the Trump supporters. Put a pin in that new conservative movement thing. That's a way bigger issue, but I think it's kind of a bigger issue with the Trump supporters. Like, when there's a pushback on, like, Trump threw a baby out of a rally, there's immediately, like, it seems like the reaction is to instantly go for a non sequitur, like, oh, well, Hillary did this, or, and it's always the wrong.
That's right.
There's no organized counterattack. He counterpunches so well, and the Trump supporters counterpunch so poorly. It's kind of hard to fight the narrative when you're like, when your first move is, okay, well, I'll accept that narrative, and then I'm going to fight that narrative. It seems like it would be better if you were like, which you always say, to your point, the term that we always talk about at Regated in the After Hours channel is fuck the narrative.
That's right.
Instead of trying to accept it and go, okay, well, he was mean to a baby, but let me tell you why Hillary's worse. It's like, no, because you just admitted, you gave up all the ground. You said, oh, yeah, so he's mean to baby, so what? It's like, no, it's not so what. You've given them all the power.
Yes. As Andrew Breitbart once said, and I love that line, I'll repeat it a million times, I don't accept the premise. I don't accept the premise, period.
It's such a it's such a an important point, especially now, and especially as the election heats up. When we get to these debates, I mean, this is only going to get worse, right? I mean, that's my opinion.
Absolutely.
This can only get worse.
Yeah, it's going to heat up, and that's what worries me. Is if you didn't realize that the pressure that the heat was going to get turned up after the conventions, if you didn't see that coming, you haven't been paying attention. Now, I think part of it has to do with a lot of the journalists we talk to and see and hear from now are millennials. So they haven't been around for many election cycles, and the type of pressure that they're seeing come from all sides is intimidating. My position is it shouldn't be, but I can understand why it would be, especially if you're not used to it. If you've never really been a political guy, I mean, Trump has brought in a lot of people that weren't really all that interested in politics before. So some of this heat and this scandal is new to these people, and I don't blame them for it. But what I'm standing up and saying is, cut it out. Like, stand back. Take a look at what's going on, recognize what's going on, and take the next action from there. We do not need to be reactive to this liberal narrative. We don't need to constantly, like you're saying, react and defend, especially when there's nothing to defend.
Mm-hmm. I love your part in this regated opinion piece. I mean, and you sum it up in one line: stop fucking apologizing. And I think it sounds so simple. It's easy to go like, oh yeah, well yeah, you shouldn't apologize, but it means everything. When you know you're right, or you know you made a joke, you weren't intending to say anything mean to somebody. You don't have malice. If you're making a joke or if it's an off the cuff remark, I mean, Trump supporters say that they hate the PC culture. This is the PC culture in a nutshell, is that you would make an off-color joke and then you would be forced to give an apology. And my problem with that is that, one, the apology is usually lame. And it doesn't really mean anything. An apology is not an apology if it's not really sincere. If you apologize for how someone took something, you're kind of what you should be saying is, I'm sorry you're such a fucking baby and you can't handle it. That's the truth. Instead of these half-ass, it's like all these little half measures with the not just with the never Trumpers, but with the people who are in the camp, who are on board with us. It's almost like this condition that oh my gosh, these people feel someone has been made to feel bad, and he did it because everyone's saying he did it. So I'm going to step in here and I'm going to be the one who says, yeah, he shouldn't have said that.
Right, absolutely. And, in all of this, I think ultimately my perspective and where I take a lot of solace is, and one of Trump's qualities that I think I value most is his leadership qualities. And what that means is all of this backseat quarterbacking that's going on right now. Trump should do this, Trump should do that, which if it's happening behind the scenes in the media, if it's happening out on Twitter, I can guarantee you it's happening in his campaign. I don't expect him to react to it. I don't expect him to respond to it. And that's part of why I value a candidate like him, because he's going to continue to make the hard choices. So ultimately, I don't worry about how there's continually every day. I'm sure you see the same thing. Trump should do this. Trump should do that. My point is, it doesn't really matter what any of us have to say. He's proven at this point he's going to do what he wants to do. He's going to do what he deems is the right strategy. And generally up to this point, he's been right. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I just... To put a final point on this, I mean, we got a guy who has found an unconventional way to win from the very beginning.
Yes.
And it's been win after win after win. I mean, to his point, winning and winning and winning. People get get sick of the winning, but he keeps winning. But and they do. The Never Trumpers are really sick of the winning. But
I'm sure.
You get this thing where it's been unorthodox. It has been. This hasn't been your typical storybook. Like I think of Bill Clinton in 1992, where a little guy comes out of nowhere and he runs everybody down, and he's the comeback kid, even though that comeback kid thing is based on like an erroneous view of that.
Yeah.
But you have this that storybook narrative doesn't exist with him. It's always been unorthodox. And for people to go, yeah, he shouldn't be so unorthodox. It's like, well, why would you hamstring the guy? If the guy has won up to this point, and he's continuing to you look at his crowds, you look at her crowds. I know, people say, oh, yeah, well, you're not being honest because, you look at this poll, you look at that poll, you look at 538, she's up 10 points. There's no way, he's only at 4, he's at only 38% with Latino voters.
Right.
And I wonder, how can these people make the leap from, we all can agree, and I think even centrists can agree, and definitely people on the right or the new right or whatever the hell you want to call us, we can agree there's something wrong with the mainstream media. There's a narrative that's created that's spread out. I think we can all look at it in just having eyes and having a brain. You can go, yeah, there's obviously a way that news is filtered out. There's a way that this thing is done.
Right.
There's a way that a hit job occurs. We can all agree on that. And we also can agree if we read the DNC leaks. And you don't even have to listen to Breitbart. You don't have to listen to MSNBC. You can literally go read them yourself, and you can see that they obviously have influence in the media as much as, hey, is that guy going to write an article? Is he going to send it here so we can check it? And we'll send it back. So we know that there's tentacles in the media. And it might run way further than that if you really want to get your tinfoil hat out. I really believe that. But at the very least, they're entrenched. So if the narrative is going to be controlled and the news is being controlled, why would anybody in their right mind think the polling data is like the Holy Quran or Scripture or something that's infallible? That no, this is true, because they wouldn't lie about that. They'll lie about everything else, but no, this they wouldn't mess with. Where does this come from? What do you? I mean, you call it. And I love it. You call it a progressive brain disease.
Yeah. Well, it is. It absolutely is. I believe, and I could be wrong about this, but I believe the guy who came up with the concept of a meme referred to it spreading sort of like a virus, and we've seen that in internet culture, and the same applies to politics and the political stage. So yeah, a lot of this is the liberal narrative is in itself a type of meme. It's a type of cultural virus, and it spreads from person to person through Twitter, Facebook, Salon, HuffPost, BuzzBeast, whatever the fuck it is, and it spreads. Now the good news is we're finding more and more that this stuff is having less and less impact, and I think part of that is the Democratic Party and the establishment party overplayed their hand with Obama. I don't know. I'm sure you remember 2008 when he was elected. Mm-hmm. People were weeping. And it wasn't just Oprah, okay? People really believed in that whole hope and change narrative. It meant something to people. People turned out in droves, and they really thought they were taking place in something big, something transformative. Now, fast forward 8 years later, and they realized what they actually took part in was I'll say we, because I voted for the guy. We elected a guy who we knew really nothing about. He had no track record. He had nothing really on the political scene or the economic scene that we could look back on and say, oh, he's been successful here, or he's done this, or he's done that. All we could really say about the guy is he was a good speaker. And where are we? What we found out is he was awarded some kind of marketing award for being a great marketer, for being a great brander, and that's what he was. He was the chief marketing officer for the establishment party. He pushed their agenda. He oversaw what they did with the housing market. They took tens of thousands of dollars out of each home, any American that owned a home, and lost tens of thousands of dollars in the crash. He took part in how they tied that up. And this was as the economy's crashing, as we're all losing our retirement money, as everything's falling apart. They took more money out of our pockets through real estate. And then after that, he brought up healthcare. And what happened with healthcare? Mr. I'm against lobbyists. Mr. I'm not going to hire any lobbyists. Hired the largest lobbyist in the healthcare industry. He hired her. He took her on in his administration, and she oversaw Obamacare. And what do we have now? We have higher healthcare costs. We have more people who are losing their healthcare and having to get cheap programs with high deductibles they can't afford. They don't have better care because they can't afford to pay for the better care. They can't afford the deductible. So all that crap about, oh, this is going to get people, we're going to prevent disease because they're going to get maintenance and all that stuff, it was all a lie. And they knew it. Anyone who actually had the time to read through Obamacare knew it. So That whole rant was all to point out that they really overplayed their hand. So this liberal media narrative that everyone is so scared is going to really shift the election, and these poll numbers are real because the liberal media is winning. I'm arguing they're not winning. And we saw that in the Republican primaries. We saw that at the Democrat convention when practically half of the people there walked out. Mm-hmm. What they're not talking about is the Democratic Party is still to this day completely shattered. It's not split in half. It's split in about thirds, maybe quarters, but it's split, and it is not split in her favor. Nobody's talking about any of this. So I'm really not that concerned. I think that in overplaying their hand, all this stuff that's being broadcast over TV, over social media, it's become essentially white noise at this point. It's not affecting voters like it would have even 10 years ago back in 2008 when I'm sure you remember in 2008, mm-hmm. we didn't all have iPhones in our hands back in 2008. Unless you were part of, the top 5%, you were still dealing with a flip phone back then. So things have changed quite a bit, not just in them overplaying their hand, but the voters' access to information on demand has changed. You see people like Cernovich and what he's doing on the ground. That was never possible back in 2008 or even 2012. So I'm not personally concerned about any of this.
I think of the back. I'm old enough to remember in the late 90s they would talk about the citizen journalists because of bloggers. Like there's going to be citizen journalists, right. and then what it mostly was like a lot of people starting blogs and bitching about football or baseball or it became an echo chamber. But now you have. To your point, the Democratic National Convention, you literally have, and I just spoke to her before I spoke to you, was Cassandra Fairbanks.
Okay,
you literally have her taking Periscope video on the floor of the Democratic National Convention. She's got a video, real time. You could have watched it if you were following along, and it's still up there if you dig through her feed of a Bernie supporter getting their sign ripped out of their hands. Not just a Bernie supporter, a Bernie delegate getting their sign literally ripped out of their hands, and you go, man. Yep. It's cliche to say, oh, well, the truth is out there if you look, but it really is. It's literally out there. I asked her, I said, because I remember I saw someone told me that a liberal friend of mine told me, they said, oh yeah, that flag thing, that was way overblown. They didn't pass out flags. They just passed out a few flags. And I asked her point blank, I said, is that true? Because a lot of Trump fence sitters seem to think that, oh no, that was kind of an overblown thing. She says, no, all 3 days. After day one, literally handing out like, hey, it's free swag. Hey, make sure you chant this. Make sure you chant that. The level of control is so crazy compared to the level of exposure. So if you wanted to watch DNC rioters, videos of that, actually, I mean, let's be more timely. If you wanted to watch the Milwaukee rioters right now as we talk, Sunday night, you could literally watch it. There's no one to control that narrative, and that's when the news is best. For now, yeah. Exactly. This is when it's best, though. Is when it's uncut, when it's raw, when you got to watch that footage, and you got to make up your own mind. There's nobody there. You don't have O'Reilly there to tell you this is what this is going on. This is what's going on. I can't believe these people are freaking out. You have to make up your own mind. And I think when you see raw video of people lighting let's not say people, let's say Black Lives Matter supporters lighting a gas station on fire, you go, there's no way to spin that. You just go, this is really, really fucked up.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it also really highlights, every election you hear people talk about how, and this is the election, this is important, but on the precipice of TPP, on the precipice of what we're seeing with social media and censorship, and all of that mess. And what a lot of people don't know about TPP, by the way, is very, very little of TPP is actually about trade. A lot of TPP is actually about the internet and regulating the internet. And we're already seeing these very progressive companies who also, by the way, happen to be backing Hillary Clinton's campaign. We're already seeing them take steps in that direction. So I think in terms of making sure that this type of information is accessible, that the population cannot be controlled by media, we don't want a situation like which may or may not be in Russia, but as we imagine, at least years ago, was in Russia, where you had maybe, North Korea, let's say, where you have the one or two public TV channels, you have the government-approved message, and that's all that gets out. We don't want that. And I think that all of this that's happening right now, it's very interesting. I think that's why we saw, despite everyone telling us otherwise, but despite everyone saying that Trump has no chance of winning, he won in landslides. Why? Because people were able to see the guy uncensored, uncut. He was the first candidate, I think, to actually stream those rallies live, uncut, uncensored. So you got to see everything, right? You got to see the protesters that would come in. You got to see the get them out, take their coats. But you also got to see him talking for over an hour about policy, about real life issues, about things that real life blue collar American workers have to deal with on a daily basis. And guess what? It was very different from what we saw on MSNBC, on Fox, and all the news channels. So the whole spectrum is changing. I think that the Clinton campaign is really lagging behind in terms of keeping up with this whole new media thing. Trump, on the other hand, is essentially an innovator. He's using Twitter, he's using social media in ways that no one has done before. That's why you have someone who, as of right now, at last time I checked, hasn't spent $1 on television advertising. And meanwhile, we're looking at Clinton spending, I think, $230 million on TV ads so far?
On just TV ads. Yeah. It's weird. I saw this the story. I can't even remember where. I think I even might have saw it on a liberal outlet. But they said that, they surveyed some Trump supporters, and if you talk to, I think they said, at least 40% of Trump supporters that they surveyed, based on the survey. And again, you never know with polls, but they said 40% of the people that they surveyed of Trump supporters, they swore up and down that they've seen a Trump television ad, and there is no Trump television ad.
That's right.
But they swore they've seen it because he's been on TV so much.
Well, that's what happens, right? Once he publishes it on Twitter or anywhere where it's going to get any kind of visibility, the media has to cover it. And they might cover just a piece of it. They might take an 11-second clip out of it. But that really doesn't matter, because what are people going to do? They're going to pull up their iPhone, they're going to type it in, they're going to find the whole thing, and they're going to watch it.
As we wrap up here, I want to, because you made some great points. Your article makes some good points. Hannity's article, which was after yours, kind of made some good points, although we didn't call out other media personalities.
I wasn't going to say anything.
I'll say it. Yeah, I was the one who pointed it out to you. I was like, you wrote this great article. Look at this. You got a guy who's, but of course, he doesn't say stop fucking apologizing, which needed to be said. But let's let Donald Trump weigh in from his Twitter feed from just an hour ago.
Nice.
And I'm going to quote on this. So he says, quote unquote, stay on message, quote, is the chant. I always do. Trade, jobs, military vets. Second A, repeal Obamacare, borders, etc. But media misinterprets. And then this is the clincher, and this is what goes right back, ties us all up in a nice little bow. Certain Republicans who have lost to me would rather save face by fighting me than see the U.S. Supreme Court get proper appointments. Sad. And that is sad.
Right. Well, and I would take it a step further and ask, do they really want to see him appoint conservative or fair Supreme Court justices, or do they want an establishment justice on the bench who's going to push forward more crony capitalism, more globalism, more TPP? Is that what they really want?
I want to thank Cassandra Fairbanks for stopping by. I also want to thank Daniel Walsh from Regated.com. Go check out his work right now, right after the show. I'll have links in the show notes. Also, I wanted to thank our contributors, JP, Robert, and of course the show editor and producer, Lee Dean. The MAGAPod family is growing. And hey, thank you for listening to the show and checking it out. Please follow us on Twitter at MAGAPod. And also, please, please, please download the episode, either via iTunes or Stitcher or Podkicker, wherever. Actually do the download. The download is what counts when it comes to statistics and selling this thing to advertisers. So, and you can also use the download link. I put the download link in our Reddit posts. I put the download link in the MAGAPod website when you look at the show notes. Also on Regated.com, I actually put a download link there as well. So you can actually just click that and you can download the episode. That's just as good as subscribing on iTunes. I know people don't want anything to do with Apple after the story that came out. I understand it. I'm kind of, I'm not over it. I'm kind of pissed off about it. I'm hot on the whole deal. I'm not going to get into it. But all you have to do is just download the episode. You don't have to work with Apple. You can download it directly. I'm going to start providing you the links. So like I said, again, you can find it on regated.com in the show notes. You can find it on MAGAPod.com in the show notes, or you can find it on our Reddit page. And also when we make the post that lets you know about the show on _Donald on Reddit, I will also include the link to download the episode as well. So if you love the show, though, and if you really love the show and you want us to keep making it, please go to MAGAPod.com and use the blue support button in the upper right hand of the page. Every little bit helps, and we definitely appreciate it so much. Also, I have a major announcement on Monday. You have to follow us on Twitter to get the news. So at MAGAPod. You have to follow us on Twitter to get the news. Something big is happening. Something huge. If you love the show, you got to check it out. So thank you, Trumpire, and as always, until next time, stay nimble, Navigator.